Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Egghead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, look at that.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Very nice introduction.
Have a seat.
Do we have the microphone going? Is that, can we hear? That's okay? Great.
All right. So, we like to get to know a little bit about the people behind the amazing. So we're going to start by talking about your early life. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your family was like.
Well, that's the first time I've been asked the question in front of a crowd, so that's an interesting new thing here. I'm a Midwesterner. I grew up in Chicago area, and the normal suburbs of Chicago, right? Go Cubs. And just middle class, tree-lined street in one of the suburbs of Chicago. And my dad was an ad guy, worked in downtown Chicago in the ad business, so he was a long time kind of from the Mad Men era and all of that. But
Awesome.
So maybe I get a little bit of my marketing genes from that. When I grew up, my dad would be reading magazines and media, high consumption stuff, and then he'd look up at the TV when the commercials came on, and everybody else would look down, right? And so I got to hear what was going on behind the commercials as I was growing up,
That's
the explanation. So I always knew that was a little made-up game that was coming through. It wasn't just the truth. But I just, grew up in Chicago, normal, three brothers and sisters. And
Where do you fit in that line?
I'm a middle child. I'm the third of four. Yeah.
Very good. All right. When you were young, did you have any inklings of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
No, nobody back in the 70s could have imagined what computers were like
Right.
in the entrepreneurial economy. So I really didn't have any clue, and even during my college years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So,
What was your favorite subject in school?
actually, I kind of geeked out on economics. So I studied a lot of things, didn't know what I wanted to do, and the microeconomics, not the interest rate, macro, super math kind of. It's a method of figuring out how the world works, whether it's politics or business or, philosophy and the rest. Marketing is a lot of that. There's a little mechanics behind this game. It's not a random game of the communications game and everything else. So I really enjoyed that. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I just actually found something I loved and kind of threw everything else and kind of created my own journey in college. So I wasn't an entrepreneur growing up. I, did all the normal things that people in the Midwest do to make money when they're 12, and that is, shovel snow and mow lawns and then get a real job and all the rest of that. So we did all that, but I didn't have a view of the entrepreneurial way until I got out of college. But I was already kind of going my own way. So that's the thing. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs that were selling. One of my friends and clients that started Firehost, was the 12-year-old selling baseball cards and making more money than anybody else in the neighborhood. I wasn't one of those kids, but I kind of went another direction. I kind of stopped believing that what you learned what was being taught in school and what was coming across on the TV and so forth was not all the truth. I was kind of going my own direction. So
That's interesting.
I'm sure a lot of people have that kind of experience.
Yeah. And then out of college, you worked at Egghead. Anybody remember Egghead?
Yeah,
we
if
know a
you're
few
over 40, you remember the old days of packaged software in the early days. So in 1987, when I left the University of Iowa with a degree in economics and business, came back to Chicago and looked for a real job, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. It was a difficult economy back then. Remember Black Friday? Just everything kind of dried up, and it was a different game. And a buddy of mine, my best friend, said, "I'm working at this software retail store. Why don't you work with me?" And I said, "I don't know anything about software and selling, and I've done enough retail to get my way through college, so I'm kind of done." But I ended up working there and kind of fell in love with selling and software and all of that. So I was very fortunate to start at the moment the packaged software business went from one cabinet at Business Land or Computer Land, if you remember way back when, to actual retail kind of consumer. So that was the beginning, and we've been through a couple phases of life since then. So, I credit him with getting me on this journey. And back then in the software business, there was barely a software business. There was a few companies. Everybody was using Apple IIs and Macintosh and IBM PC, and it was, anybody who was in that business was kind of a misfit, kind of getting off in retail software. Everybody was waiting for me to get a real job, and I was just loving what I was doing, playing with all the software and selling and helping people, and so that's a version of what I've been doing since then. So I was very fortunate to start like that.
And then how did you, I know you were the 11th employee with Pat for ACT.
Yeah.
So how did that transition happen?
Well, in the software business, you're standing in front of a wall of software, and in those days there was something new that popped up every week. So I kind of learned the marketing game not from a book or a class or something. I learned it standing in front of a wall of 1,200 products, and 100 people would walk in today and say, I'm looking for, what do you got? And playing that match game. And you could say 1,000 things about it, but really people want to know, you got this one and this one's more like that, there you go. And played that game. And I really enjoyed the software. And I discovered ACT software, which was a new product in a gray box, and it was not very descriptive, but it was the first product that was really made for salespeople to manage their contacts. So, that was business cards in a shoebox or a Rolodex, or keeping track of it in a spreadsheet if you were good with computers and so forth. So it was one of the first products there. And in any early market like that, there's a lot of products that show up. In the end, there's a few that last, but there was dozens of word processors and all the rest of it. Now it's just one. But I discovered the ACT product, and I was selling it like crazy and helping consult with people after hours, just playing, geeking out, solving their business problems through software. We all did that. That's what the early market was. We just played with this stuff. It was imagine a business before you put your contacts in a computer and before you had a spreadsheet for numbers, right? Before you had email for everything else. And this stuff showed up in its crude form, and woo, it was a playground for the slightly geeky. So it was a lot of fun. So I discovered ACT, and then I met the people who did it. In those days, the founders and the small teams would go visit the Egghead store because they sold half the software in the United States. You had to go visit the stores and kind of talk it up and do that thing. So I was meeting people from Microsoft and Intuit, and me and my tie and my name tag. I don't know if you guys caught that. I guess I'll admit it if you can't do the math there. I was Egghead from Egghead. Yeah.
I didn't catch
so
that.
So I met Pat and gang when they were coming through, and managed stores for a few years. It was one of the fastest growing companies in America. They went public, and joined Pat and down in Dallas. So yeah, that's how I got started.
And how long, before it sold to Symantec, how many years were you?
Well, it was 1989, so about 4 years. And
wow.
So it was one of those early market runs, but where at the beginning, salespeople didn't use computers. They didn't know how to type. They didn't believe you could use computers for contacts. Everybody that age remembers that time. And so it was kind of crazy. Why would I do that? Salespeople who sold computers didn't have computers to help them sell. And their laptops were not lappable back then and all that. So that was, we traveled the country. We did trade shows, all those computer shows. I spent about a third of my year on the floor at a trade show with the microphone, presenting to crowds. I was one of those demo guys. I visited every Egghead store in the country twice. I was just user groups, and it was that's marketing. It's you got to go explain it to people in early marketing. So, eventually I got out of that, and I was helping the sales side. Was doing the marketing. So once you do the demo a few hundred times, and you want to automate it into a self-running CD or the demo disc back then, or update the box. So all of a sudden I was drawn into fixing features and messaging and all of that. So marketing out of the front line. So not sales like closing deals and pipeline, but sales to be the representative. And so I was taking those messages and then writing, a salesperson who could write, right? And then I was the product manager in the middle of everything with Pat. And then we sold the company to Symantec in '93.
You stayed on the company.
Yeah, so I stayed for a few years. So I'm one of those people. I'm very entrepreneurial, but I'm not an inventor entrepreneur. I don't walk around saying there's an idea and there's an idea and there's an idea. I've got some good ideas, but there's a lot of good ideas out there that need more nurturing to make them grow. And from the very early stages, and so that's the part of the journey that I really like. So
looking back on that experience, for people that are, considering growing a company and looking to get acquired and then choosing whether or not they want to kind of exit or stay on, like, I don't know, what's your advice or what's your experience or what's your perspective on that whole subject?
Well, there's a couple things. One is just the journey of the business. And I've got a couple people asked me earlier about my kids. I've got an 18-year-old girl who's just graduating from high school, and she'll be off to college, and a 20-year-old who's already in college. So when I started this journey in Dallas is where I met my wife, and California, when we moved to Symantec, we had our first child. So there's phases of life of children, and they're all different, and they're all cool. And the same thing with companies. So when you start this journey, each one of them is an adventure, and it's harder than you thought it would be, and it's going to take more out of you, and you got to be a little different in each one of those phases of life. But that's the first thing, is get used to the phases of life. And remember, software companies in the early days, there wasn't like VC exits and public software companies. There was only Lotus that was public and a couple others. It wasn't like a big money game, and there wasn't a lot of VCs. You've built this company to grow it, and you didn't know what was going to come next. And only really in the mid-90s did this kind of build it to sell it thing start, and that was even kind of not really there until the dot-com era, and then that really changed the mentality. So building to raise money and building to sell it, that's not the reason to make a company. I mean, it's the payoff, but it's not the reason to do it. By the way, when you raise money, you've committed to sell it in some way, right, to get it back. So you've just sold your company when you raise a little money. You're committed to do that. But survival is really front and center to a lot of entrepreneurs, and funding and so forth is right there. But the goal of the business is not the funding, and the goal is not necessarily the acquisition. That's kind of survival and a little bit of the prize for your efforts. So Infusionsoft, we're one of those companies that grew from 3 people who you weren't sure they were going to get through the month. It was a small business. You had 2 brothers and a brother-in-law here in Arizona, and doing all the angel things, and people saying, I don't understand that, and that's okay, off with you, right? And they kept going and grew it from a small business into a technology company, and now we've raised money, and we've raised about $125 million. And we're about 650 employees. We're almost a $100 million business. And people ask us, well, when are you going to sell it or go public and get out, right? And going public is just another funding event, and it isn't the goal. It's not even the best milestone. And our goal is to keep growing this forever, because we're just at the very early stages of this market, and we're going to have a very big company that's going to serve a lot of customers. We have 25,000 customers in the small business world. That's just getting started. So the IPO isn't even the goal. And so it's a little different for Arizona companies that don't tend to go as long and go as big. But the new kind of big markets that are out there, and subscription business models that make even revenues, once you get the flywheel going, it's, you don't have as many risk moments in your revenues as old kind of hardware software companies. So it's built to last.
Very good.
Yeah.
So you were with Symantec for a while, and then you got, I don't know, lured away to Saleslogics, or what?
Well, so the journey, imagine, an early act with the little crazy team, and I counted myself as one of the crazy ones that just wanted to do this adventure. I believed it and saw it before the world did. And we grew that to about 150 employees in 1993. So that was a pretty cool thing, right? And all over PC Magazine, and one of the top 20 products you'd see in the retail stores, and that was pretty cool. And we created the category. We actually made up the words contact management. They didn't exist before we created it. And all the words that we use for things like smartphone and crowd microphone these are, they didn't exist. People had to help make those things up. So we created that category, and in '93 we sold it to Symantec. Actually, Pat and team did, and I came back from my honeymoon and realized the company had sold. And the next day, I came back. The first day, by 10:30, I had the package, it said, hey, you want to move to California? So 3 weeks later, my wife had the idea a month before, but
wow.
We were living in California and going for it. And so I was kind of leading the business at Symantec, and so we turned that into a yellow box product and, you know, made it one of their top 5 products, and that's an adventure there. So a lot of entrepreneurs think, oh my God, big company, that's just, I tried that once and I don't want to ever go back there. But it's another version of the adventure, and it's a little different phase of life, but it's still growth game and so forth. And basically, for the first 15 years of my career, when I just literally started that retail store, I worked for companies that grew 100% a year.
Wow.
And that's the game. That's what the game was, and that's how that was just normal for me, and that was fun and adventure. And I worked 14 hours a day, and what else would you do? And that it was just kind of cool stuff, and got quite addicted to it. So by the time by '95 or so, salespeople were getting laptops. They were using computers. ACT was the #1 seller. It was about a $40–50 million business at Symantec. It was used by millions of people. It was one everybody used, but that time, sales teams were starting to say, you know, I finally got a couple of my sales guys on computers. What if we got everybody to use computers, and we can get our prospects and our customers and our opportunities and pipelines, and it'd be great if we get that in one place. And nobody had that. There was nobody doing that. There was people who used ACT, and they sprinkled across their sales teams, and, you know, some crazy databases that no salesperson would ever use. So that's what it was about '95, and so people were hovering around us saying, can you go up market and give me something for Teams? And big companies were started to make Salesforce automation, and it really didn't exist. So that's when I was hearing it, Pat was hearing it, he'd already moved here, and we created it. In the '90s, it's hard to believe for entrepreneurs today in a very crowded, very busy tech market where everybody can kind of create everything quickly, but in the '90s, it was easier to find big open markets. Salespeople didn't have computers, and they were going to get them, and they were just there. It was harder to make the software and make a business out of it. It was really hard to make software. So we actually had a team in California making ACT for Windows because we couldn't find any Windows developers in Dallas in 1991 and a half.
Wow.
So, you know, it was a different time back then. Different adventure.
So would you say the second time kind of building with SalesLogix, was that easier or harder than your first startup, if you will?
Well, they're all hard. So you kind of go back to the journey, and I look at my track record, and I hear those, and I think, wow, look at that. It just looks like da-da-da-da-da. It's all hard, right? And it's white knuckle a lot of the time. And you're learning stuff, and you're getting hit on the head of things you need to know that you don't know, and way to grow, and so forth. So I would say that as markets get bigger and funding is there, the world gets a little easier. I mean, that was, you know,
sure.
we didn't know better. So it was Pat and a bunch of 24-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know better. We're just, you know, on board to do this. So it was actually much faster, though. So from SalesLogix starting at Pat's kitchen table in Scottsdale in '95 to getting funded and then building the product and launching a year later or in early '97, to grow 20 million in 3 years, go public in '99 because we could, and take it to 50 million. So about 5 years we got from 0 to 50 million in revenues, and bought ACT from Symantec. So Symantec was acquiring products, putting them in a yellow box in the '90s, and then they got rid of all the yellow box products. They said it's about internet security. So it's a focus thing that makes perfect sense. So they were jettisoning all their products, and we were big enough to buy it back, is what we say. So yeah. So at SalesLogix, I was the VP of marketing with Pat as the CEO and a founding team, and I ran international as we were going overseas. And when we bought ACT, I got to run the business as the president and general manager. So it was kind of a dead run in the '90s. I mean, I pretty much worked, you know, 8 o'clock every night, and you know, weekends and all that kind of stuff that entrepreneurs and, you know, business owners do. But imagine selling ACT at Egghead with a name tag on, and then 12 years later running the business. It was about a $50 million business we brought it back up to that level with about 200 employees. So that's kind of cool.
So then when you left there and SalesLogix was done, you kind of started in the consulting world, helping other startups. So you have pretty diverse experience, obviously very heavy on the marketing, but why marketing? I mean, what is it about? Why did you decide to focus on that?
Well, like most people who've been around in little businesses where everybody's kind of got their hands in everything, that grow bigger, and I've done a lot. I've been very involved with product, designing and guiding product, and selling and distribution and the marketing game and other things that go on there. And I've kind of done everything in the software business except code. But to me, in those days, there wasn't really much separation between marketing and product. It was kind of, the same thing. There's a little bit more separation. It's a deeper discipline on both sides. It's more complicated. But the marketing thread is just so important for any company that grows. You can't avoid it, right? If you don't have that marketing thread where the outside world says, I get it. I get what you guys do, and I think you're the best at that. So we all start companies and go on our quests. We see a space, an opportunity, and go start selling something to eat, right? And then we think it's many things to many people and so forth. That's a way to get to, get up and running. But the outside world is going to demand from you, are you focused on me? Are you the best in the world at that? And they won't give 10 people the best in the world. They'll give 1 or 2. That's why everything ends up as 1 or 2 in the end. Android and iPhone. It isn't they can't make it, the world demands it. So I was always playing the game from the inside out, and I literally, the voice of marketing, saying the words and hearing the responses and putting it on the boxes and seeing back and forth. And by the time I got 15 years of acting sales logics, I connected with all my software company buddies. I realized, oh my gosh, almost nobody's got the marketing gene in the early companies. And I had it, I guess, and I love it. So I'm a lot less involved in product, although, strategically I am. I'm not designing dialog boxes anymore and all that. So right. Marketing is, so there's marketing that, quote, marketing department does. Let's call that marketing with a capital M. When you call, hey, marketing, let's have marketing do that, right? Get leads, build the brand, tell the story, that kind of thing. But marketing is just more innate to the business. It's innate to the product. It's what every entrepreneur needs to have a handle on, right? Tim was telling me, I need marketing. I don't do marketing. Yeah, everybody in this room now knows what Credit Mike's does. He knows marketing. How do you scale that is the question. So
well, along that line, marketing really does intimidate a lot of people. I think it's partly because it is variable. It's not cause and effect in such a direct way as some other parts of business. And so a lot of, especially technical co-founders or just business people, what do you see as common misconceptions or practices that founders or CEOs have about marketing, and how should they shift to become more comfortable with it?
Well, it's a problem if the leaders of a business say, I don't get marketing and I don't do marketing, because marketing is too important to leave to the marketing department, and you just can't figure everything else out and then do effective marketing afterwards. I don't know if you read the stats when they said the most valuable brands in the world, right? Apple and Coke and Google. Google's in the top 3, depending how they're ranked, and Google doesn't, really didn't advertise to get that way. The product did the marketing, getting it out to the world, right. Engaging with people, getting money, and so it's really intertwined with the product. So first of all, stop saying that, CEOs. I don't do marketing, and stop avoiding the responsibility to integrate the marketing strategy. Who are you targeting? What are we doing that's different than everybody else? How are we going to be known as the leader? And then there's that you can get help. How do I go to market and get customers and do social media and build a website? You get help to do that. But you can't do great marketing. You can't make a growth business unless the outside world says, they're the best at. And that means you have to focus in. It's crazy focus. It's actually an unnatural focus to get so focused enough in your business that it can be marketed. And the PR people here in the room and people who build websites in the room know that 1 out of 10 of the good people who are onto something have created enough focus in their story that they can take that out powerfully to the outside world, so it goes. So
I know you're super passionate about this principle of focus for good reason.
Yeah.
And so So let's just kind of go layman's terms, like describe what focus is to you and how a company determines their focus.
Okay. So by definition, every company that gets big has had a focus. Now we can look at Amazon and say, gosh, they sell everything you can buy with one click, right? But wait a minute, how did they start? They started with laser focus. They just did books online to people who would buy through a browser with a credit card, which wasn't a lot of people when they got started. And they just did that until everybody knew that, and then they started adding things. You go back to Facebook. It was just Harvard before it was Ivy League. You go back to Walmart. They spent 7 years in Northwest Arkansas in the towns that Sears and Kmart would not go to before they started moving that. So you got to go through that pinhole to be focused enough so the outside world will recognize you as a leader. Companies don't get big when they say, we do a little this, we do a little that, we do that. If you're buying something, I'm selling it, which is how entrepreneurs get going, to kind of see what's out there. So that's part of the game. You gotta kind of get some sense. You go out there, you start playing, you kind of broaden it out. But when you raise money and you say, I'm going to be big, you've got to actually start narrowing it down. And focus means you're saying no to somebody. So I've got the question twice tonight. Infusionsoft makes sales and marketing software for small business. So when you guys sell to bigger businesses, we don't. Okay, but really, when you sell to bigger, no, we don't. Small businesses have unique problems. The under 25 owner-operated businesses, they don't have IT, they don't have a lot of money, they don't have time. They can't make Salesforce plus everything work for them. It's a different world. That's what we do. And you've got to go out there and play, see where the market is, and then you've got to find a focus. And it isn't marketing's job to tell you how to stop doing those other things and focus. It's the CEO's job. That's a hard decision. And it's counterintuitive because you've been really feeding yourself to eat. So businesses that have grown out of services, turning into products, and businesses that have grown like B2B type stuff, business type stuff, right? It's a classic business. I'm selling to business. I could sell you that one thing, so I can go down the hall and sell this other thing. So why not sell two things? Two's better than one, right? Well, if you want to stay small and get through the month, that'll work. But if you want the outside world to recognize you as the best, so why marketing, by the way? Because when I stopped saying everything else, everybody started listening to me. It's a focus game, by definition. We said a focus a couple times tonight already. So you've got to go find a focus. Your job is to find your focus. Who is your unique target market that you're selling to? What is it that you sell to them? We make sales and marketing software. We could say 100 things, but that's what we do, and we say it over and over again. We don't make a lot of things. We're known for that. And what is unique about that? What is the key benefit to the world? You could say 1,000 things. What one thing do you get to say? Right?
There's power in that.
Right? Like the best, I mean, you could do this over and over. McDonald's is struggling because they sell 122 products, and it takes a long time now. And they grew because they were hamburgers that were fast. And now their same-store sales are sinking. You guys all read about that in the news. And who's winning? It's In-N-Out Burger, the ones who just do burgers and nothing else. They have more same-store sales than a McDonald's.
Now, when it comes to founders or even small business owners, there's kind of an emotional process for them to come along with the idea of focus, because it's like you said, they have to actually say no to some things that they look at as potential revenue generating. So getting laser with who their target client is and what they offer, what advice do you have for people with kind of accepting that concept and believing that that's going to be the better path than trying to solve multiple things for people, besides the general logic of it? I mean, there is an emotional process that I've seen many times. Well,
actually, that's one of the reasons I'm in Infusionsoft. We're passionate about helping small business succeed. And it's not, I've been doing this for a long time and selling sales and marketing software to small business people, and that's what we do. We really don't let people work there unless that's their passion. We can't make it be their passion. So repeat your question here.
So helping the actual owners or founders narrow in and be comfortable with that emotionally.
So small business, which is like, I want 1, 5, 10 employees, stable business, really money at the end of the week and a little time and whatever thing, but they're not like funded growth companies. They're both in early entrepreneurial game. They both have a common denominator, is that there's a person in there and their head's in the middle of it, and you say it's slightly emotional. It's very emotional. That's why you did this thing. And I'm sorry you got your glasses on, that, you know, it makes it's the exciting part, but it also kind of skews this thing. So the emotional thing to get a business started, it's a lot of pieces. It's actually quite scary, isn't it? Quite difficult. You know, those of you that had left big businesses, started their own little consulting companies, that's some of the scariest moments I have. I got 3 clients, oh my God, right? And, you know, working like crazy, that was some of the most stressful times I had. So survival is innate in the emotional experience of small business owners and early startups. I mean, that's your game. You got to thread that needle and so forth. And that wires in, I got to make the sale, I got to sell to everybody, I got to do that. It's really hard to say no to somebody who says, that's in front of you, that will give you money, that, you know, so, but eventually you got to actually fund that up so you can start to say no, right? You kind of got to do what it takes to say no to somebody so you can start to lean one way. You look at anybody that's gone through the growth crucible, right? Ubiquity PR and crowd mics and so forth. There's all kinds of things they could do, and when they stop saying, we're for everybody, and we do everything, it's when everybody finally goes, oh, now I get it, right? Ubiquity is the best tech PR company in the Southwest, where, you know, software companies, all they do. So they got them all. So, and they're the fastest growing one. How does that happen? It's counterintuitive, but you cannot grow past that scrappy, knocking on doors, getting business kind of, you cannot grow unless you focus and commit to being the best for the outside world at that thing.
That's true.
And it's okay if you have something else you sell down here and you get somebody who's not in your target market behind the scenes, but eventually the world is buying the best at a time. Google went from 0 to everything because it mimics our brains. We type in a word, the best comes up top, we assume, we click on it, and they get all the spoils. Number 2 gets half, number 3 gets half of that.
That's
and
true.
the rest is gone. So that's how the world works if you want to grow. And if you're raising money and you're saying you're going to grow, you have to get to something that the outside world says, I'm going to be the best at that. And the best is partially when you say that's all we're focused on. When we get to be the best in the world at sales and marketing software for small business, because Salesforce isn't focused on it, Microsoft, nobody's really focused on it, right? And we've been doing it for 12 years. We have more experience than everybody else, and we're actually the best. But, you know, by the way, there was like a lot of confusing descriptions. You know, at Infusionsoft, maybe those who remember 5 years ago, we kind of focused and said, it's sales and marketing software, small business, don't say anything else. And don't sell to anybody else. Don't try anything else. That's what we do. If the market's big enough, we can do this. We can eat now. Let's do some of this stuff. And I swear to God, it was like a therapy section for, you know, 120 employees. So 120 employees 4 years ago. And we focused and we grew. Now we're 600 employees 4 years later. And we're getting $50 million investments at the time from Bain and Goldman Sachs because they say the world needs the best at sales and marketing software for small business, and we think you're going to be the one. Oh, isn't that interesting? So we doubled our growth rate when we really narrowed our focus.
Yeah.
And only said that to the outside world. So that's a prerequisite to do marketing that works.
That's true. And I think it's just such an important topic. I see the entrepreneurs that I work with, this is a constant thing that they run into. And as they find that focus, I know in one of my businesses, my sales dipped a little and my profit went up by like 300% the year that I finally just got too tired to continue trying to offer everything to everybody.
So let me guess here. So you quit the corporate job and then you did the dance thing, I heard, right? Dance? Okay. So you probably trained on all dance, right? Did you do like dance for everything? Okay.
Absolutely.
Right? The rumba? Okay, all that stuff. Okay, and then you got to eat for a while there. That worked pretty good, and then it actually took off, right? So how did it take off? It's a magic trick. It works every time. You can't take off unless you do this. So, okay. So how did it go? Did you spend more on marketing?
No.
Oh, okay. So keep going.
I focused.
And what did you do? I mean, how did I know? So what did you do? No, come on.
I cut all of the programs except for the main one, and it's like Kid Sister. And once I did that, I worked half as much. I made 3 times as much.
And what was the main one there?
Pole dancing.
Pole dancing.
Keep trying to get me to say that.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
No, I'm just going to say, I could have been rumba, right?
Yeah.
By the way, if I want rumba lessons, and my wife's really into that or something like that, right? If it's rumba, I'm going to go to the best rumba in wherever it is, right? I'm not going to go to the one that says we do 75 things and can fix your plumbing, right? You focus and you go, and wait, this is counterintuitive. So I'm an entrepreneur marketer, so I love that. I really respect what entrepreneurs, CEOs, people taking it on themselves do. It's really hard to venture out and take on the world and go figure out where the hole is and then inch your way over to focus and then commit your chips there. But that's actually the job. That's what you got to do. And, then it can get easier. And as Clayton Mass, CEO and one of the founders of Infusionsoft says, the growth from 0 to 10 million was harder than the growth from 10 to 100 million, which is the journey I've been on for the last 4 years. So, because that's survival, that's all going on, and where's the market, and nobody knows about this, and if you start early enough, the world doesn't believe it yet, right? When I started Egghead, nobody believed that everybody was going to have a computer, and that was crazy. And you got to be slightly crazy when you're getting started. Otherwise, you're just you're the 26th contact manager or something like that. So that's there's a lot going on there.
That's true. So let's touch on then, once people have determined their focus and they're pretty clear on that, they've got their brand, they've got their focus, they've got their product, their target, what would you say about marketing at that point? How does it change, or what's some advice you can give to people that are at that stage?
Well, it gets a lot easier when you decide what your game is. Did it not feel like, oh my God, this got a lot easier? Yeah. Right, and a tax accountant friend of mine, somebody said, you just ought to focus on your physicians. That's a third-year business. It's where all the fun is. It's all the profit. And now he's just tax accounting for a physician. All of a sudden, his business exploded, right? So that's the first thing. Because you can do a lot of tactical. You can go knock on doors. You could send emails. You could do a lot of stuff, spray and pray. If you don't have a focus, it's not gonna move very far. You get a focus, then you can start logically deriving the game. It's not random, right? People who want us Rumba dancing are generally a certain type of person that generally, gathers in certain places, and there's a certain thought process in their mind that you can respond to, and then you can start to drive your way through it. It's really messy when you're selling many things to many people. That's where it's quite random. So you kind of solve for more of a single line. We do these things for these people, best in the world in this way, right? That's the job, to get that focus going. Then you can take it tactically out. So there's the tactical side of marketing. How do I get in front of people? How do I get leads, get clicks, get purchase decisions, right? All that. How do I get to revenue? How do I feed a sales team or something like that? But there's the strategic side. So that's the focus game, is the strategic side. And so a lot of people kind of miss that step, and they kind of go together. Strategy is just the decisions you need to make for your tactics to work better. There isn't like some strategy Bible, or PhDs can only do strategy. It's just the decisions you make so your tactics work better. So I've read a lot of great books and known a lot of great marketers, but it's really from trying a lot of things and realizing, gosh, how do I do that better? Really, the focus game is required there. So once you've got focus and you go out to the tactical game, you can logic your way through a lot of it and trial and error. And these days, you can trial and error, A/B test really well. I mean, imagine the 90s when you didn't have data. You didn't have clicks, right? You have conversations. And I was doing it by conversation. And registration, mailer, like you mail in your registration card. So I'd kind of get a sense for what version of Windows people were using. I'd go to the box with the registration cards down the hall and, take off the rubber band of one of the stacks and do this. Like, which one? Okay, like, man, there's a lot of Windows 3.1. Okay, I think that went up last month. So you can be a lot more, you can spend less, you can try more, you can start to derive your way to it. And in every tactic of marketing. Advertising, conversations, networking, door knocking, flyers from the sky. So what were the main tactics for your business for the dance studio?
A lot of the daily deal sites brought awareness.
Okay,
and
there you go.
Different things like retargeting and obviously referrals and stuff.
Yeah. So it really narrows down the possibilities, because there's been an explosion in marketing tactics in the last 20 years. I mean, we have all the old stuff, right? PR and media and good old-fashioned outbound calling and all that kind of, all that stuff. Politicians have all that old stuff too, right? And they got all the new stuff, social media, websites, and a trillion other tactics. and an explosion of tools there. So it can get really complicated. So you've got to really make those decisions so you can focus on the 4 or 5 levers that you can start to play with and optimize.
I think that's a good point, because the tactics do ultimately become logical when you're very clear on who you're trying to talk to and what you're trying to say to them. And that's the part that is what the founder or CEO's responsibility is. It's just in understanding that strategy and clarifying it for their business.
Right.
They don't have to be an expert on the tactics.
Yeah, and so when you say, gosh, there's a lot of technical entrepreneurs that say, I don't get marketing and so forth, I mean, it's a little bit, it's just their head game telling them a story. We live in a marketing world. Everything we walk down the street here, we're seeing everybody, all the signs, every restaurant. Man, there's people who've thought about all the things they could do, and they're just going to make this thing to be the best burrito and Mill Avenue, and right. And we walk down the street, and that's the one. We're fish in water like this, like the cartoon with the 2 fish that says, how's the water today? And the other fish says, what's water? I mean, we're living in that game, which it's so surrounded on. We're just seeing the distilled version of the focus that we just think that's the way the world is, and we don't even notice it anymore. So if you can find your focus, you can logic your way through marketing. And it's not as obvious as writing code or plugging in a wire makes the power goes on, but there are levers. And, human brains haven't changed in 10,000 years. All these tactics have changed. Our human brains are still kind of operating the same way. And there are some laws of nature there that, will not be denied.
Very good. So, back to you. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Literally, I see myself at Infusionsoft. We're about a year and a half away from making our 2016 goal, which is a 10-year plan that they created. Imagine being a $3 million company, scrappy company, right? Just all the people that you could get on boat with you and getting through the month and all that, and saying, this is a huge market and we really don't know much, but let's make a $200 million business about it. So Infusionsoft is crazy intentional about a couple things: planning from big to annual to quarterly to down to everything, and our culture and values. The hard and the soft, we're actually crazy intentional about those, and that's the deal. We're actually planning our 2030 goal. And I said we have 25,000 small business customers. There's 5 million small businesses in the U.S. alone with 2 to 25 employees. Outside the U.S., it's just huge. This is like the first inning of this market, and this is what we believe in. I joined Infusionsoft because I already believe that entrepreneurs and small business, and this is the lifeblood of the economy, and this is where everything that we sit in today came from. And we honor that, and we think it's really hard. It's harder than ever to go through that, and that entrepreneurial spirit is waning, and nobody's focused on helping those guys. So that's what we do. You don't get to play at Infusionsoft unless you do that. And so I can imagine myself in 10 years growing this business. We're growing about 40% a year. It's going to be a $1 billion company if we keep doing what we do. And that will be now the second inning of, so it's a huge problem, and the world's coming our way. So it sounds strange to people to think, man, you started these things and you grow that. Why would you keep doing that? Well, that's actually why I'm here, right? It's not to be IPO or whatever. It's because I want to help as many small businesses as I can, and if that means I got to learn to be the CMO of a $1 billion company, and that's a different game, and then that's what we'll do. We're actually more committed to our goal than to our personal problem of, gee, I like that we just went like this, and we office this size, and it was 5 of us, and I got to be like that but not do that, right? So that's a challenging game. We're challenged by that all the time to keep growing and changing. So I've done this a long time. I've done it 25 years. I've taken one company public, and Infusionsoft will be big, and it'll probably be public, and I know a date for that. This is, I talk to kids at ASU. I tell them kids these days. I'm 50 years old. I've been doing this 27 years. And I still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, yes, it's awesome, let's do this thing. And it's hard, and we figure things out. And, so we built our culture and the system at Infusionsoft, so it's not a crappy big company. you can be big and still be human and good and powerful and interesting and, you know, a place where everybody has space to be themselves and do cool things. And so it doesn't have to screw up. So there's a little myth that, just like the myth of why would you want to be an entrepreneur, that's crazy. You know, it's kind of what we do. And there's the other myth that all big businesses suck. And most of them do, but it doesn't have to be that way. So that's part of the CEO's job is to not make it suck when you succeed. And that takes some intention.
Very good. And if anybody wants to talk more about culture, we've got Tim. Raise your hand for me over here. Tim Porterhouse in the crowd tonight. And he is an expert on culture. He's done some pretty amazing things and helps people with that all the time, too. So very cool. All right. So lastly, is there anything else you wanted to share with the entrepreneurs here tonight? Anything?
I just wanted to appreciate you for starting something. You know, I know how hard it is and how illogical it is to the world. The world isn't built to make you successful, and yet you have a passion for what you do. You believe you see something that other people don't see. You believe you could figure it out. You don't know the answer, but you're going to get through it. And if you have employees, people look to you like it's going to be safe, and you figure out a way to, you know, make that happen. And it's really hard. And I totally appreciate that. And Arizona needs it. Every community needs it. Arizona's got a lot of great startups. So, you know, I've spent time in Silicon Valley and other places. There's a lot of smart people there. There's a lot of smart people here. The bigger difference between them is that everybody thinks they can make $1 billion company in Silicon Valley, and few people do in Arizona. So keep believing. And, you know, Infusionsoft is an example of what happens if you have a hyperactivity of belief and intentionality about focus and give up and, you know, are not intimidated by really hard things that show up at every stage, which they will. And so keep going. And, you know, it's going to happen. There's going to be more Infusionsofts and more GoDaddies, and this is a good tech town, and it's a great place to be. And, you know, keep growing the people that come in contact with you.